త్రిలోకరాజ్య సంస్థాపన రామ, మోక్ష ఫలదాయక రామ, మదీయ పాపముల్ పాపగదయ్య రామ, నిను ప్రస్తుతి చేసదనయ్య రామ, సీతాపతి రామ, కరుణాభయోనిధి దశరథి, కరుణాభయో
Paul Marca, and all our respected guests. Welcome and a very warm good afternoon. We are delighted to have you here to participate and share Stanford's perspective on innovation and entrepreneurship hosted by Chalapathy Institutions. Thank you, sir, for honoring our request. Chalapathy Institutions, which includes pharmaceutical college, pharmacy college, and engineering institutes in Marca and Long campus, is committed to deliver quality education. On this ground, we thought a seminar from our respected sir would make an impact and make you aware of the Stanford's perspectives on innovation and entrepreneurship. We are honored to have Mr. Marca here today. Mr. Marca is an executive director of Stanford University, Stanford Center for Professional Development. Mr. Marca earned his BA from Stanford and held various positions at Stanford. He did his BA in communication, and he was a manager for multimedia and production group, director of Stanford Media Works, and currently is the executive director of Stanford Center for Professional Development. Before I hand over to Mr. Marca, I would like to once again extend a very warm welcome on behalf of Chalapathy Institutions.
And wonderful welcome. The Chalapathy Institutes treated me like I have never been treated before, so thank you very much. I was telling Sujit that I would never forget this experience, and so I will take this with me my entire life, and I look forward to the photographs because my family will never believe this happened. It's just great. So what I'd like to do is maybe share just a few ideas about innovation and entrepreneurship with you today. But I need yours that are potentially controversial. I hope stir the pot a little bit. I saw some of the centrifuge. We won't move that quickly, but we'll move pretty quickly through this presentation, and I hope you can think about some questions that you might ask. I also hope that you think about some of the messages that I'm delivering and take them and think about how you might activate them here in this context. Stanford and Silicon Valley won't transplant directly here, but with your help, taking some of the thoughts and lessons and, like a good pharmacologist, mixing it up, you might find some real inspiration that you might take away. Is that fair? Does that sound reasonable? Okay. So first, I have to apologize. I have a new title. I was given a new title on December 20, so I don't even have cards printed up. In my new role as Associate Vice Provost, I had the opportunity to work in the middle of the Stanford campus, thinking about how to extend content, education primarily, to people who are not on the Stanford campus, but also to improve the experience on the Stanford campus for those students in residence. So that's sort of my job. And for the longest time, I've had the privilege of traveling around the globe to share lessons, to work with companies and universities to think about how we might partner. In fact, we're talking here about something like that. And then to deliver on that promise, to get faculty engagement, to really try to figure out how to make things work. Stanford has 125 years. And I start with an image way back in 1850. Now I know that Chalapathy Institutes is quite young right now, and I want you to think that you're pioneering students. You're helping set a new direction. But I want to take you back to talk about Stanford's start, and then maybe you can take away a few lessons from that as well. First, this is Leland Stanford and his wife Jane, shortly after they were married in the 1850s. What you notice about them is, first of all, they're very, very grim. Remember, in the old days, you couldn't smile in front of a camera because it took too long to get the exposure. But they're fairly well off. And they were living in the state of New York, which is on the east coast of the United States. And at some point, Leland Stanford was a lawyer. And he had a fire in his law library. And he thought maybe this was fate. And he decided with his brothers to travel to the west coast of the United States, some 3,000 miles. This is before Air India, Jet Airways. This is even before rail. And so they have to make a long and arduous journey across the United States to go to the gold rush, where there were lots of money, lots of people making money, lots of interesting and dynamic things happening. Very much like India right now, particularly this area in Andhra Pradesh. You have a new capital region that's occurring, and you have a new university. So Stanford started a business supporting and servicing the gold miners with shovels. We did a little digging this morning as I planted 2 plants, and things like that. He was very successful, but he wanted more. He took a huge risk and decided with some of his friends to build that railway that would have made his journey easier from the east coast of the United States to the west coast. So he did this. He was very successful. It was a difficult effort. And he and his friends created the Central Pacific Rail. This is Leland Stanford right here. He was an entrepreneur, like many here in India. And he nailed the spike, the golden spike, which exists. If you ever get a chance to go to Stanford, you can see this golden spike that connected the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States. The very first time that it happened. In some sense, the institution here is like that. You're doing something really unique and different. You should be very proud of this. I'm going to come back to the challenge that I'm going to issue to you. You have an obligation to Chalapati Institutes when you get done with your studies. But back to the story. So Leland Stanford and his wife Jane had been wildly successful, taking a huge risk. And yet they had no family to share this wonderful experience. Jane Stanford was at the time 39 years old, which in 1860, the life expectancy was probably 52 years. So she was really old. Today, 40 years old for a woman to have a child is maybe a little bit old, but not, it's possible. Back then, almost impossible. And yet, they had a miracle baby, Leland Stanford Jr. This little boy grew up in the lap of luxury. He was honored and privileged to spend lots of time in Palo Alto on the horse farm where his father raised horses. So we call it the farm. And he also took not one but 2 tours in Europe called the Grand Tour. How many of you have had the privilege to travel overseas? Raise your hands. So a few of you. In the day, those who had an incredible privilege, and those of you who raised your hand have had that privilege, they would travel overseas to learn about the different cultures, to broaden their perspective. The good news is today, you don't have to travel to get that perspective, and I'll talk about how you can get it. But then they would do this. It was on this second tour that unfortunately Leland Stanford, at the age of 15 years old, passed away of typhoid fever. He contracted typhoid fever while studying the Roman ruins in Turkey. He came back to Florence, Italy. The doctors tried to save him, but he was unable to survive. So imagine the tragedy that these parents who had a miracle baby faced. Well, they could have taken that tragedy and their great wealth and gone on and done other things. But instead, they decided to create a university, very much like Chalapati. And they created the founding grant to honor their only son, Leland Stanford Jr. University. So they took this great tragedy and they broke many rules in building this university, and they got it done. Very much like Chalapati Institutes, you have done something really great. And in the early days, it was quite difficult. Those pioneering students had to work with the faculty, lots of interesting and dynamic times, including, I imagine, here. And yet, today, because of the hard work of the faculty, but also because of the commitment of the students, not just through their 4-year or 8-year commitment, but afterwards as alumni, giving back, both in terms of volunteer work, but also in terms of money, contributing back to the goodwill of the university so that future generations could be successful. So this is the basis and the founding of Stanford. Today, Stanford is considered one of the best universities in the world. I had the privilege, much to my parents' surprise, to attend Stanford University. I don't think I can get in there now, just to be honest. Very difficult place. But I did take my degree, and I have been there as a staff member now for 29 years, and have had the privilege and honor to think about ways to extend Stanford University to other regions, to other places, so that the journey that I had, other people can have as well. So, a few Stanford facts. I'll talk a little bit about also the School of Engineering, and then we'll get into hopefully some inspiration. Does that sound fair? Next 30 minutes or so. So, we have 7 schools at Stanford. The schools are listed here. And one of the things that Stanford does, and I think I just did a tour, a wonderful tour, is we have schools, these 7 schools work together on one contiguous campus, and in that contiguous campus we have faculty rubbing up against each other. So the business faculty will work with engineering and law to consider how to address energy policy issues. There's a building that we've created called Energy and the Environment, where faculty in earth sciences, in business and in law, as well as in humanities and sciences, work on water problems. It's at the intersection of these disciplines, like water, that you can make some really great progress to benefit humankind. So one of the challenges I'm going to issue you, as you think about your career here, as a student, you have to take exams, you have to pass the material, you have to show expertise. But as a contributor to society,